Yes. Oh my goodness. This is amazing right now. This is Writer's Chat. So some of you may think this is new here, but we are from Instagram. We used to do this live on Instagram, and now we are doing our first kind of YouTube channel, taking something that was so special there, and now we're bringing it here to all of you guys. Our once a month chat where we talk about everything there is to know that we've experienced so far about our writer's world, the author world, the publishing world, the marketing world, and how we can help either fellow writers that are doing this professionally or something on the side or hobby and help them navigate these worlds. And if you are watching this and maybe you're not a professional writer or something that you're doing on the side, maybe you're just, I don't want to say just, but you're a reader and you just want to know like kind of like what happens here, like how does all this work? We're here to kind of like cover all those bases. And again, like I said, we are doing this based on what we've learned so far, and we're still learning, but we just want to give back to those who get inspired us, or we want to give back to let people know you're not alone and how you're navigating this world. So my name is Andrea Freeman. I am an author and angel guidance coach.
And my name is Caroline Topperman, and I am a writer, a book coach, and social media coach.
Yes. So what's also special about why we're here today is this is our 1 year anniversary of actually doing these chats. So I think it's incredible that we're celebrating this anniversary, but doing something so different. So it's kind of like we've upgraded. We've kind of like taken this to another level. So I love that we can do this to mark our anniversary.
That's right.
So some of you that might be following us right now, you may have watched us already from our lives on Instagram, but for those who don't know like how we like met, like how did this even like come to be, we both attended I don't even remember, like a couple years ago or so, a women's publishing summit, and Caroline was one of the guest speakers, and I just like loved what she was talking about. And I found out that she had an Instagram account, and there was other people too that were on there that I, followed accounts with. But Caroline was the one that I just connected with her like instantly. And I love what she posts on her Instagram, like how she connects with her audience and the work that she shared. And I just loved how she actually like answered me. It wasn't like emojis only, like she just literally like whatever I would post, whatever I commented, she just was right there, whether it was like on her feed or like a private message. She was just very devoted to connecting with who was paying attention to her work and was leaving these comments. So, and it just became this relationship like back and forth. She would comment on my work, and I was at a point with my, I guess you'd say like writing career, that I'm like, you know what, I want to get out there more, and I want to do lives, and I want to have conversations and dialogue. And my husband always has this motto. My husband's like, you won't know if you don't ask. So I just had this, thing playing in my mind, it was like I forgot what end of the year it was. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask her and see if she's interested. And if she says no, she says no. What am I going to do? But she was so on board with it, and it was great. Like we would just do like a lot of prep calls before each session that we would, or chat that we would do like once a month. And it's just been a year later, and we still have so much to talk about. There's never not enough. We just like, there's so many things that we come up with, again, like based on our experiences so far, or just like, what's out there in the writing news, the writing world that we have opinions on and thoughts on, things that we're comfortable with, not comfortable with. So we just like kind of share it all here.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I know that we've had such a like amazing conversations. Like I think about, and I have it on my website too. Like I tried to like link our Instagram stories, because I'm like, oh, these are just like gems, so I don't want to like lose them, because things get lost, on Instagram lives. But we our goal here too is to definitely talk about like new topics. So if you've followed us there, we definitely want to talk about new things, but we do want to, at some point before we get into those, like kind of like do a little bit, you know, not all today, but like recap like some of the things that, you know, I think that we have talked about that they never really expire. They're like really like
Yeah, it's all
important.
evergreen content that we do. So things like how we, a lot of what we do talk about too is just promotion as well, because we don't have huge teams working behind us to, you know, neither one of us is paying $10,000 a month to publicists and teams, marketing teams. So a lot of this is figuring it out ourselves and what works and what doesn't. And because that kind of thing also does change sometimes, we'll probably be covering a lot of that again. Even though we have, but I think that there's always more, right? There's always more we can do on that. And then also just our websites, how, because part of all that is self-branding and how you're perceived online. So it's things like that I think we'll talk about more again, obviously. But it's, if anybody is listening and wants to go back, it's in my highlights, it's on Andrea's page. So you can easily find that there, because it's clearly marked. Yeah, because we're both writing, we're both continuously producing material. So one of the things too I want to talk about a little bit in the future is just getting guest posts on blogs and things, because that's also really does drive a lot of traffic back, and it's stuff that you can then use for self-promotion later. So yeah, but maybe we should talk a little bit about what we are currently working on, what we've done, what books we have.
Yeah, I want to add something before.
Mm-hmm.
Two good points that came from what you said, that, you know, even though like, yeah, like you said, like we've talked about this before, and, you know, the times are always changing, but like even like our perspective on it may be different, and like,
oh yeah,
you know, like how inspired we were in that moment. We'll just have like a different spin on it now, like a different lens on it. And something too that I think would be good to revisit rather is that you could be a writer in so many different ways. Like, and I know people know this, but it's not just books. It's like, even if you're watching us and you're just crafting emails, you're just crafting newsletters, blogs, like it's not just books. So you're a writer. You could be a writer, and the definition of writer is in so many things that you
actually
do.
I'm really glad that you touched on that, because we do talk about traditional publishing and self-publishing, and then also or publishing with smaller independent presses. And there's always a really big divide, I find, in the writing community about which way to go with those. And it's funny, because I'm kind of really glad that you mentioned this, because I'm part of a few groups that are, you know, indie publishers. And now the word indie is not just for like now, so indie used to always be the like independent presses and things. And then, but self-publishing now has really kind of taken over that word and use that word, which is fine. And sorry, for the record, I actually don't care how you publish. I don't care how anybody publishes. But what I'm finding with some of these groups is that they get very aggressive almost in how they in their stance on one or the other. And I'm one of these people that like hates being put into a box. I love that you said that, you know, there's a lot of different things that constitute you being a writer. It's not a book necessarily. Like I've actually written more articles than anything else. And there's a couple of these groups that I find that I mean, I don't really want to belong to them, because I find that if I decide that I want to try to traditionally publish something, which I'm trying, as you know, right now, then I don't really belong, right? Then I'm not an indie publisher. And and so, and then like it's vice versa, except for I'm, more in the indie groups. But I really, I respect you if you're a writer, and I don't really care how you do it. And I don't really think that that's, if you're writing something and you're producing good work, that's what should matter. And that's the important thing. So that's how I would, it's just, I think that that's what we really want to celebrate, are just writers in general, and not how they decided to publish, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. And just staying true to you, and staying true to what works, because, also too, like every piece of work that you do is just, it's different. Maybe the genre is different. Maybe the mood is different. Maybe, like even for me, like my first book, I did use a self-publishing company, but the book I'm working on now, is going to need a different spin on how it gets out there. So it's like, it's just being comfortable with, you don't have to do what everybody's doing. It's not always cookie cutter. And, and we talked about this too, like just, knowing the kind of work you're doing and what kind of care it needs, what kind of nurturing it needs. And as long as you're just doing, you're just writing, you're breathing life into what you're doing every day in some way. And you just find a way that just makes sense. You do the work, you do the research, right? On what, again, makes sense, what's relevant.
Absolutely. And and like some books, for example, it's something like a romance, which neither one of us do, but a romance do really well on Amazon, right? So they do really well as self-published, and they also do really well as books that are like those. I know one of my editors, like the coach that I know, she actually does cozy mysteries, and she like, they're all self-published, and they she, like, one comes out like every other month or something, and I think it's wonderful. Like, she's created this amazing business doing that. And it really works for her. But for example, the memoir that I'm writing, that would just be like shooting myself in the foot to try to do that, because who's going to care, right? So I think that that's the key. And when I look back at it, my blog still on the side, I have probably over 1,500 blog posts on there. But that's the way I was found by other people and other places to be able to write for them. So that doesn't make that writing any less valid, I guess, right? So I think that that's the key that we want to really focus on and celebrate, is if you're writing, you're a writer. And if you can get it out there, excellent. So that's the main thing. And then there's lots of things that I've written that will never really see the light of day, because, maybe they weren't good enough. Maybe they weren't, I didn't explore them as much as I could, or whatever. But so I think that that's important. I think that, and that's okay too, right? Because they were for me.
Also too, what comes out of what you're saying, which we've talked about before, and I'm sure we'll talk about again, is like what you're saying, all this content in your blogs, like you can also repurpose, that work, maybe that turns into a book, or, vice versa. Maybe your book can be turned into these mini articles that you put somewhere in a blog. Like, there's so many things that you can do with the work that you have, like, which I'll get into a minute. What I do, I'm creating oracle cards, and I'm authoring the book or that comes with it to show you how to do what you're doing, and writing the messages that are channeled, because writing is channeled energy. It's, this inspiration that comes through. So like, even that's something that, you can say I'm a writer of, if that's something that you're doing as well. But I like to, like, it's true that there's just things that are just for you, that you write about, that you don't have to publish. Maybe they're the things that just help you, like the prompts, or like writing tools. that just get you to do the main things, the bigger things that you are trying to get out there. It's just like an exercise more for you, and just for you, like just maybe you have a diary, maybe you have a journal, just for yourself. It's just that space that you don't get criticized, you don't get judged, you don't have to worry. It's just there. It's just there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said there was important too, is that so one of the things you want to do actually is, in order to market a book that's coming out, for example, is to try to get guest posts and try to get articles published in places. And that counts for any kind of publication, because that is going to build up hype about your book. And so that, I think that that's really important. So one of the things I've been doing recently is on Instagram, I've been posting bits and pieces of my book. Just short excerpts, bite size, that people can see, but it gets them excited, and it gets people talking about it, and it gets people thinking about it. So it's not like a big shock, like, "Ooh, look, I have a book." So I think that that's one of the things you actually want to be doing. And then my very first book that I ever published is a fitness journal, and that was 100% taken from my blog. Part of my blog is fitness. It was an industry that I was in for a very long time. And what I did is I took out the best blog posts, the ones that got the most interest, the ones that were very relevant. And then also just with the experience I had being in the industry for real. And I bought templates and I put it all together and I made a book out of it. And, it wound up being quite a nice, thick fitness manual that I created. So I think that those things that's super valid, and all of those things count towards something in the end, right?
Yes. Yes. And this is one of the reasons why we're doing this is, you had just said, I'm putting little excerpts from my upcoming book, which I love. I love anything that you write about, but I love that we're getting a peek into, I do. I love that we're getting a peek into your world right now. I didn't do that with my first book. I was coming from this mentality of, you don't tell anybody until it's actually done. And you don't want to get like, a bad vibes on something that, you took so long to do, and now someone's going to wish bad on you. And no, you just wait. You just wait until it's actually physically in your hand. And I did that wrong. And yeah, I made sales like directly, like my hand to theirs, but like online sales, that honestly fizzled, because there's only so many of your family and friends, and then who then tells somebody, which is great. And they tell somebody, but it's just, there could have been such more of a bigger reach if I had the hype for it beforehand. Yeah. Like, let people know, not just like people offline, but let people online know, hey, I'm doing this book. Here's what it looks like today in my drafts. Like, I had no idea. But that was something I had to do.
The good news is that often second books sell first books. So
yes.
So that's the prayer, it's all right. You're perfectly positioned to sell copies of that first book. So it's okay. It's all good.
Yeah. So where we can breathe. But yeah, that's the goal. And something too, I wanted to say, like, even though, what we have been and will be talking on about with these chats is, maybe there are people that have already said what we're saying, and it's said and done in a sense, but our experiences are making this different. And there is somebody always out there that doesn't know those other conversations. Like when I first started to understand what to do the right way, I was learning these other new conversations. So there's even, and this is the same thing too with, like, we've talked about this too. I think, like, when we write our books, our stories, we may think, well, it's already out there. There's another version, but like, that's their version. This is our version. This is our perspective on it. This is our spin. So that's why it's just the beauty of talking, like having any kind of dialogue. It's a beautiful thing, because there's just so much information to be had out there. And again, like, said in a different way, that you just appreciate this vault of knowledge that comes from us, or, who we've been inspired by and all that.
Yeah. And I mean, you never know what's going to resonate. So it's
Yeah.
something like that. Just something might resonate. Suddenly you might have heard it 10 times and now you're hearing it for the 11th time. And suddenly it's like,
but it finally like clicks,
yeah,
and it's
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like that. So let's start with you. Like, every time we do these chats, I'm amazed at what you have done career wise. It's just amazing. So I know you have a lot that you many hats you've worn through time. So whatever you want to share that fits into what we're talking about today, or obviously things that you've published, which I left your book upstairs. I
right.
wanted to like,
I have it.
okay, good.
Thank
Have
you.
mine.
I got it. Yeah, no, I mean, I try to use every experience I've ever had that I tried to feed into the work that I do. So, like I said, like a lot of the work that I've done. So I was a fitness instructor for a long time. And because of that, we don't have it anymore, but I had a column that I wrote with Huffington Post Canada called True North Fitness Guide, which was literally fitness exercises, which was a lot of fun. And I really have a fun time doing that. Like I said, I started off writing blog posts and then articles. So I worked for this magazine called British Mode, and I wrote a lot of beauty articles. I hilariously wrote articles for them about places to have weddings in England, and I had never been. So it was pretty fun to do that. And then I wrote a lot of articles with perfume. If you need a perfume, how to describe a perfume, I am your person. I have so much fun doing that. And then from there, I went and I wrote a lot of articles for real estate. So I've done a lot of these, when you walk by and there's like a new development happening and it's like the most exciting thing ever. Yeah, I've written those tags too. And they're really fun to write. They're very prescriptive, but they're really kind of fun because you have to like make it seem new and exciting. And it's like the same development that's like, 50 feet that way or something. So it's actually a lot of fun. And then my first book that I wrote was called Fit Wise, or is called Fit Wise. It's available. And it's straight talk on being healthy and fit. And basically it's a fitness guide. And it's anything from like how to even choose the best running shoes for what you're doing, or the best quality of workout clothes for what you're doing. And it's, and I, from my experience, get that people were very uncomfortable sometimes going into the gym, especially women. So how to be comfortable in the gym, things like that, things that you don't find in a lot of fitness manuals. And then from there, it went to my book that I will show you, because the other one's just online, but this book, there's my screen. So this is my book, Tell Me What You See. And it's a book of visual writing prompts. I basically did this when I was really depressed and hated where I was living, and I couldn't write. And I was staring at a blank page. And then I realized I'm actually a very visual person and I need to see things. Because I have a degree in film. And so, it all makes sense suddenly. And so I used photographs from my phone that I had taken in the last few years. And I just made this book of prompts. Wait, can you see that? So that's what it looks like. And then now, as you know, I finished my memoir and I'm querying with agents, and it is slow going, but I'm not going to give up, and I'm just going to keep doing that. And either I'll go with a small press or an agent will hopefully pick it up. And then the other than this, the other big thing that I started is I have this really, I'm very interested in that idea of where is home, how we interact with other cultures. There's so many things happening in the world right now politically, and I'm not worried. No need to get into all that. We all know what's happening, but I truly understand or truly believe that when you understand another culture, when you can immerse yourself into another culture, you gain respect for that other culture. And I think a lot of the world's problems would be, maybe not as intense if people would do a little bit more of that and just a little bit more of understanding that. And that came from my 4.5 years living in Poland. And, not every part of it was great. There's a lot of things that I still don't like about the culture. And I'm Polish, so, I feel like I can say that without getting yelled at. But for me, it was still, but understanding it and understanding where people are coming from just makes you a lot more understanding. So I started Migrations Review, and for anybody watching, Andrea also contributed to the magazine. It's online on Medium, and it's in the description, so you'll be able to find it. But yeah, and so this is just it's an exploration of cultures and identity and the places we call home. So I'm very excited about that, and the goal is to bring in lots of different voices of people from different places. So there's a few people. There's somebody who lives in Portugal. She's South African. She's contributed. Somebody else she's Korean. She's adopted, and now she lives in Italy. So yeah, I know, right? So there's like lots of different voices from different places, and I'm hoping that we can create these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, so that's where I am.
No, I love it because, when you think about like what you start off doing in your life and you're like, I was over there, now I'm here. Like how, how does this work? How does this make sense? But it's like you pull like, especially as a writer, even if you're doing different things that at first don't seem like they connect, that helps you write, like, especially if you're writing a story and there's characters and you have an experience with something and you bring it in, like you pull it in there. But you've always been, in a sense, writing, even though because even today I just found out something different that I didn't know about real estate. Like, I'm like, oh my goodness. Like when I tell you, I learned something different about Caroline. I love it, but it makes me feel like I don't do enough.
No. It's been a long time.
But it's amazing. Like you were writing in some way, doing having these different roles that you've had. So I appreciate that. So
Your turn.
my journey, I was like, where do I start? So it's interesting. My journey as a writer starts with me never loving to read. Actually,
That's really funny.
I had a really hard time growing up reading. And when you're a kid and you're in school, obviously you're reading this and summer reading, and obviously you're not picking these books, and you're like, God, no. But I had a reading comprehension problem, and I dreaded book reports because it would always be this epic battle that my parents really tried to help me understand what the hell I was reading, and frustration on their part, because now we're talking like 1 o'clock in the morning, like you got to write these answers and this sucks, you're not getting it. This is not what you read. And it was horrible. It was like such a nightmare. But I did get help. I had tutors, and it did get better. But I would say my love for reading and actually understanding what I was reading and retaining it and doing well on tests was probably like in high school. I took a lot of creative writing classes, and I actually took a Shakespeare class in high school that was probably like the first and probably the only class that I didn't have to study, because our teacher for homework made us journal what we wrote about. And, not knowing then, like the love of journaling kind of like started happening at that point. But every night I journaled, loved it, retained it, didn't have to study for the test, because every night I was basically studying and I was exercising my writing, and it was amazing. And then once I hit college, it got better for me wanting to actually read. But I would say books like Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, J.K. Rowling, like that made me like want to start reading. And that was it. Like, so a girl from would like, my stomach would turn seeing a book to, I'm finding creative ways to store my books now because there's so many books, different genres, and I have a plethora of journals that are filled. Like right now I have two. This is where I put all my poetry. This is where I have our chats that we're storing. So I have so many journals. Some are not even like written in yet. I know one day they'll have something amazing in them. So that's like the journey of that. I think where I get the love of reading and writing, even though it didn't come until later in life, was my grandmother, who used to sneak out of her house to go to the library just so she can read. I mean, that's like mind blowing. Like, who do you hear sneaks out of their house to go to the library? Maybe you do, I don't know. But like, she would tell me this, and she would read like 300, 400 plus page books in like a day or two. Like, it was so in her. And then my mother loves to write. Like, greeting cards, which she would put the messages in there, poems she would write, even emails, or like, so I as I got older, I started to see, okay, this is where all this is coming from. And now I've healed the parts that seem broken. And now like we put it together. So for me, writing through the years has been blogs and poetry that, I didn't know would be something I would want to do like professionally. So I mentioned earlier, I'm an angel guidance coach. So I am able to connect with other people's guardian angels and relay their messages through like oracle card decks that I use, or just things that are intuitively downloaded to me. And so this experience that I have, this ability, I know also is how I'm able to write, where my intuitive connections and energies, inspirations flow from. So I've always wanted dialogue. I've always wanted a connection. So I would, on my old Facebook page, it's not up anymore, but I would, write on there. And I had a different blog at the time. I was blogging these messages that were being channeled to me that I was being guided to share with people. Like, that's how I was writing. So blogs for people in that way. I used to work the corporate life. So I don't mean to insult myself or other people that have to still work corporate, but I used to unfortunately work these mindless jobs because, God forbid, they would let you do something outside of what you were hired to do. I was always the one that wanted to help beyond my role, but they were like, no, you're in this little chair, in this box of time, and that's it. So I would write poetry, based on what was affecting me that I needed to let out. And it's interesting because writing that poetry, I actually wanted to write a book, but had nothing to do with the poems that I was writing back then. And so my first book at that time, I did query, and I was, researching, how do you get this out? How do you get a book published? So I was querying. So I got rejected by all, and that's fine. That's fine.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's hard, but some of them were nice. They actually got back to me and responded, and, said kind of why it doesn't work for them. And I was like, you know what? Hey, I got a response. At least I know it went and it got received. So that's awesome. But years later, back in, goodness, when was this? I think it was 2016. Yeah. My first book that I did get published, which is nothing to do with the one that got rejected. It's a totally different theme. So my book, Messages from My Grandparents in Heaven, How You Can Keep Contact with Yours, was born 6 years ago. So this was a story that, again, because I connect with my guides, I literally was at another corporate job, and I felt like my grandparents just took a paper and just smacked it on the table and said, you're going to write about us and your connection with us and how close you are to us and how you, based on your experiences, are still connecting with us, that we're here, and talk about us, talk about our life, and how you can help others still connect with their grandparents or anyone that's passed away. Like, what happens, this process when they pass away, and what's going on emotionally with them and emotionally with you. So, and I always say this, I read cards, I do meditations with people, I do coaching with people. Like, angel guidance coaching, but I am not a medium. I'm not a psychic, but my connection is a different way with the angels. And that's why like this book was born, because of this connection that I have. And I've actually written about this in your migrations blog about in writing about my grandparents. You know, they've all passed away at different points in my life, but I learned something so different about each of them that, you know, at the time when they were alive, you're not old enough to ask. You don't think to ask because do you know you're going to write a book? You don't know.
No.
And, you know, you're again at that age where you don't think to ask. So a lot of the things when I was trying to figure out like what were their lives like before I was born or when I was too young, like it was amazing what I was finding out from my parents or my family's from Italy. So my father's side of the family, learning about my father's side and what they gave me, like photos I've never seen, which prompted me to ask more stories about where does this happen? How did that, you know, come to pass? And then maybe just the stories that I already did know, but I wanted to dive deeper and just, you know, digging into that. So it was a beautiful like journey to get to know them again. And then just share like how I know they're still with me. And so recently I just, in my monthly newsletters that I send out for those who follow me with the angel guidance path, I talked about my second birthday and how my car accident that happened 20 years ago, I knew my grandfather was there to protect me. So like things like that. So now what I'm currently working on is poetry. But this, like I said, I've written poetry before, I would say back in 2003. So the poetry book that I'm writing now has probably been about 4 or 5 years in the making. So it's poems from back in 2003 and poems that I've written some years back and poems that I was writing while I was editing the book. So it's just like, which is the beauty of that. Poetry prompts that I'm also currently working on that may be in the book. So my poetry book, prompts that I started doing back last year. I wrote a bunch of Halloween prompts, which I love. I love Halloween. So there's that. And now I'm doing currently spring poetry prompts. So I'm in the 3rd week of doing that. So, and I love poetry prompts because there is such rawness there. You don't have time to edit. You do and you don't. And you feel vulnerable, especially me right now. I'm like, oh my God, people know I'm going to be doing a poetry book soon. Here are my prompts. What if they suck? What if they're like, this is her prompts? God knows what the book is. Like you go through this like,
Oh yeah,
holy goodness. But I love it. I love this freedom. And we talked about this too, like these prompts or even the writing that you don't share, but you're just prompting with yourself. Like if you're not posting it, it's like you're strengthening your writing muscle tool.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll cover that in another.
Well, yeah, well, definitely. But yeah, and so I enjoy doing these prompts. And I love that you invited me into your migration space because I am finding that I love writing books, which I have also so many other ideas that are coming down the pipeline for my books, as well as poetry. But I'm finding I love the shortness of poetry. I love the shortness of articles. I like these in the moment pieces. Because like even like poetry is like even like short stories. So I'm finding something very different about myself that I didn't realize was there that is developing within me as a writer. So
the reason for that too is that because it's because it's nonfiction, the whole thing. I think it's a good way for people, and because when you write, I mean, you're writing. I don't know, it's poetry, fiction, or nonfiction, right? It's kind of its own thing. But I feel like this is a good way to work out your ideas too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right? But your real ideas in your nonfiction world, in your creative nonfiction world, and then you can expand them into poetry. And actually, I want to say, now that you said it, I had an idea. But I really I think it's very admirable that you came to all of this from a point in your life where you couldn't read, because I think or you didn't it was a struggle. Because I think so many of us are, I had my first rejection when I was 8 years old. I was reading voraciously from, before I could probably speak, I was reading. My parents love to tell the story of the first story that I told, and it was before I could actually like say words very well. And I told my dad a whole story of what had happened that day to me. So that kind of thing is, and I think a lot of us that have fallen into this world, that's how we started. So I think it's really cool that you come from a completely opposite place and you had to learn to love it. And I think that in a future episode, we should definitely explore that, because I think that that's really the difference, right? I think that that's really interesting.
Yeah. It's like your origins. Like sometimes people think that, oh, well, you must be this and you must be, and it doesn't always, like anything else, like it doesn't always just land in your lap. It doesn't start that way. It's funny you say that about how descriptive you were as a child. It makes me think of when I would go to school and my dad's like, oh, how was your day? I had lunch. Like that's all I said. Like I was so like non-descriptive, like this is all you're getting. Now, like when you think about like your behavior as a writer and you're like the links that you go to, the different phrases, like I'm like, no, I had lunch. That was he's like, that's all you did. I'm like, yeah, that was it. You know, so it's just like,
yeah, definitely something to explore and talk about. So I think we should like wrap up for today.
yes.
But I wanted to end it with you just to give people a reminder where they can find us.
Yes.
On social media, where they can find our books.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. So I have a website. I have two websites. So one is for my angel readings and guidance coaching. So that is angelicmotivation.com. So on there too, you can also, there's a link to buy my book, which is again called Messages from My Grandparents in Heaven, which somewhere on there actually connects you to my author page, which is Andrea R. Freeman. And on there too, you can see where you can get my book. So I am on Instagram mostly, two Instagram pages, Angelic Motivation and Soul to Page. So Soul to Page has soul_to_page. I had to do that because somebody else had the name. So I had to like make it a little different. But yes, that is where you can find me on social media, my websites. I feel like there's something else. Oh, and then I'm also on medium.com as well. And also linked to Caroline's blog page on there. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, on social media and mostly Instagram, Style on the Side. That's where you can find me. That's also my blog. My personal author page is carolinetopperman.com. And you can find my books, including my Tell Me What You See book, on Amazon. And there's links from everywhere. So yeah, so this was a lot of fun. If you have any questions or if there's any topics you'd like us to cover, please don't hesitate to drop either one of us a line. We do answer.
Yes, we do.
So yeah. And yeah, this was great. This was a lot of fun.
I love this. And also to those who are watching this that have followed us on Instagram and now are here with us, thank you for crossing over here and showing us support here and in the past, and that you are happy to, listen to some of our hits again. And again, like I said, it'll be a little bit different how we talk about them, but just thank you for the support.
And please like our videos.
Yes, like it, share it, save it, all that stuff, all the good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.